Welcome back, players. I'm Jack with Thx Cancel, and this is Coco the Weiss Cat. And first off, sorry for not making a video in a while. I've been sick with every respiratory illness under the sun, and as soon as I recover from one, I seemingly get another. But finally, I recovered from RSV, and to celebrate finally feeling normal again, I went to New York to play in the Manhattan Regionals. So in this video, I'll talk about my mindset going into the regionals, the trip, what I played, what I saw, and overall, my experience. Now, I want to preface this by saying that when I was looking at going to the fall regionals, I wanted to go to more than one, but again, with being sick so much, it just wasn't possible. On top of that, I'd been playing Mushoku Tensei as my main competitive deck for a while, and to be honest, I was getting kind of burnt out with it. I like the deck, and I love the show, and soon I'll be showing it off in a deck showcase. But after the restriction was placed on the rest counter in the 2-2 Ghislaine, I wasn't feeling good about it going into anything people will be playing right now, and I felt like if I took the deck as it is, I'd start to dislike the play experience even more. But I also didn't really have other decks I felt great about bringing either, just because I didn't feel like playing Nino, Kanata Marine, Tokyo Avengers, or what else was big at the moment. And even if I did, I had virtually no practice with any of those, at least not to a point where I'd feel comfortable taking them to a regional. So I decided to do something a bit crazy, and I took Dragon Maid. Specifically, I took 8-door Kana. This was especially crazy as deck registration closed on the 2nd of December, and I didn't even have the cards in the mail that I wanted yet. So I finalized my deck list without even playtesting it. I was of the mindset that, sure, I wouldn't really stand a chance, but at least I'll catch some people off guard, and I might get a decent record if I just played well and my opponents weren't used to the matchup. What's more, it just seemed like a fun idea to go and meme it up for this one, especially since I wasn't feeling very competitive. Now, Kana is an interesting deck. Her level 1 combo salvages and also D-levels something on your opponent's stage, so you can effectively shut out a standby deck early if they don't get the nut triggers. Kana's level 3 combo is a level 2 change package that has hand-on core and -1 soul in the lane across. With combo, she sits at 13k and gives -2 soul instead. The change effect also gives her hexproof for a turn, so if you get her out, she's actually pretty tough to deal with. But that's the issue, getting her out. While the deck is 8-gate, and you do have a decent number of ways to plus, the deck is almost as hand-hungry as Kanata Marine, and unlike that deck, it has no way to quickly replenish a bunch of spent resources, and level 0 game does not even come close to how strong Hololive is. And without a bunch of filters, good plussing zeros, and how demanding the Kana combo is, it's tough to maneuver it into a good endgame state. The level 3 Kana event, which plays with the level 3 anti-soul combo, is basically your only way to close the game, which is a burn 3 or burn 1 and heal 1, depending on what you reveal from the top of your deck. But you also need to pitch a card and resonate with the climax to use it. So many costs of the cards require you to discard a character and not an event or climax specifically, so it makes it very tough to keep playables in your hand at all. I did put 2 Icy Tail Taurus in the top end, and they did save me a lot when I was doing the limited testing I was able to get in pre-tournament. Overall, it's fun, it's memes, but the deck is just unstable, and even if you get 2 Kanas out, you just can't keep enough cards in your hand to really put yourself in a favorable position. At least, that was my experience playing it, but I'll get into that later. First, let's talk about Manhattan. These regionals took place in the Javits Center in NYC, and of course, Manhattan. The Javits Center is a massive convention center, and I mean massive. It's home to other stuff like ANYC, which I just attended a month before, and that's where I probably got the RSV that put me out before the regionals. So this was actually my second trip to New York in less than a month. I went with my friends on Saturday even though the Weiss event was Sunday, because we actually have a Vanguard and Weiss player that was doing day 1, and of course, we could just spend some time in the city. After some initial confusion going in and out of New York trying to find a good strategy on how to travel and park, we decided to take the train in from New Jersey and visited some local shops. We got lunch at a pretty cool sushi joint in Mid-City, and we also visited a hobby shop where my friend picked up some one-piece trial decks. Then we went to Kinokuniya, the weeb capital of NYC, and hung around looking at figures and displays until we got bored of that. Then we walked around the city, appreciated some of the Christmas stuff going on, but overall, New York's got a lot less to do if you're just walking around the city than you'd imagine just looking at it from the other side of the river. Also, SantaCon was apparently in town, and it feels very weird to say this as someone who came to play anime card games, but it was actually kind of a weird vibe. So we ate dinner, went back to the hotel, and rested for the night. Our Vanguard player went 6-2 and got 14th place, so we celebrated that with some choice drinks too. The day of, we woke up and this time took the ferry into Manhattan, which definitely seems to be one of the best ways to get into the Javits Center if you're not lodging in close proximity in the city. Now, can I just say how crazy it is to see the Javits Center practically empty? The event was in a special hall downstairs at the bottom of the convention center, which, by the way, is 4 floors, and again, absolutely fucking massive. And let me tell you, this is by far the best regionals venue I've been to. The tables were all very spacious to play around, the room was extremely large, and free water was provided, thank God. Bushi Road also had an official merchandise booth. The vendors on the other side of the room had a great selection too. The bathrooms were in close proximity and clean, and the Javits Center has several built-in convenience stores and Starbucks too. So in terms of that stuff, this is probably the best regional experience I've had in terms of creature comforts, and I hope that Bushi does more like this. The logistics were top notch. But anyway, let's talk about the tournament. Since I've been down so much this season, I wasn't able to travel around to try to get a buy card from any of the shops, so I did play round 1, and round 1 I played Rushia. Now, Rushia into Kana is actually a pretty unfavorable matchup for me. Kana doesn't really compress well, and Rushia gets bigger than your anti-soul Kanas. What's more, she can pump soul with the Drow Deck Marine to try to climb over the anti-soul wall by pushing that and 1k1s. So I wasn't feeling great about it. I didn't have a very strong opening game, and my opponent got his combos and cancelled a lot. When I hit level 2, I was able to stabilize with Kana combo and protected myself for a bit. My opponent did get the Rushia package off, but not really in the way he wanted to, so the game actually evened out a lot near the end. By the final turn, I actually thought I just had him since he basically had no cards, no stock, and only 2 wins to swing in without anti-soul. But he drew a climax, triggered exactly what he needed, and despite free freshing with 8, I took 4 off the top and lost. And that felt pretty bad, but it's gonna happen. So round 1, we start X1. Round 2, get this, I actually played the Vanguard player in our group, so one of us had to make a team kill. I really don't think it would have mattered what deck I played in that game, he just didn't cancel anything and kind of rolled over and died. It never feels good to have those kinds of games, especially not in a regional where you have to knock out one of your home players, but after last round I was like, okay, I guess I'll take it. For what it's worth, he was playing Bofuri. Round 3 was something a bit different. I actually played against my pet deck, Mushoku Tensei, which is a matchup I was actually very excited to see. See, Kana's level down is actually pretty brutal for Mushoku since a lot of their stuff doesn't have hand-on core, and aside from some twin drive, Mushoku can't push a lot of extra soul. And that's really how the game went. I got a solid opener, D-leveled his level 1 Eris, and despite the fact that he played a lot of stuff from hand, I kept D-leveling his standby targets and eventually got ahead by walling off with Kana. It ended up being closer than I thought it would be, and for a hot second I thought I was going to get super unlucky and die from 2-3, but thank God that didn't happen this time, and I got it. So 2-1. Round 4 I played against another standby deck, Nino. Now I'm not as confident into Nino with Kana since they do have a lot of hand-on core and the deck has a lot more ways to push soul. I did open by D-leveling his targets and setting up, but unfortunately he kinda drew the nuts and stood by a whole new board, and then proceeded to cancel perfectly in the mid-game. By the end game, I had him at 3-6, and I was pretty ahead, looking like I was going to survive and kill him, but he drew into a second level 3 climax and comboed me again, also standbying into another back row Ichiga, pushing for exact damage. Again, it definitely felt like I had the game under control and got robbed at the end by losing some coin flips, but to be fair, that's what Nino's supposed to do, and if I'm being honest with myself, I didn't play that game very well, and there were points I could have made better calls, and I remembered 1 or 2 triggers that I missed. That one was definitely where I felt the pain of not being able to practice with the deck beforehand that much. Next up, something totally different. Round 5 was Titan, and this was the Mikasa and Sasha version. I opened with a bunch of climaxes and 3s, and I didn't draw into a lot of playables. In fact, in 3 turns I think I attacked my opponent 4 times. I also got stuck at level 1 with all my climaxes out of my deck and nothing I could do about it. You'd think this would be a pretty bad loss, but somehow my opponent got even unluckier than me. He took a bunch of damage to the face, never drew a climax when he needed it, and when I finally did play my level 3 Kanas, his deck gave him absolutely no answers to them. I could actually not believe how screwed he was getting. I ended up winning that one because he was 3-6 and had no climaxes in deck. Again, not a victory I felt great about, but being X2, I took what I could get. Round 6. This was an interesting one. I fought against the Hololive Akisora anti-soul deck with the Miko standby combo, but this guy was also packing 4 Marines and 1 Gate Climax, because in Hololive you can absolutely get away with that. He did his combo and I responded by D-leveling the 2-1 sword that the deck needs to function, and thus prevented him from getting the sword combo to even hit the board. Somehow this didn't matter at all because he cancelled virtually everything I threw at him. It was just turn after turn of double and triple cancelling. Eventually, being that I can't really heal and I wasn't getting nearly as lucky, I just ended up at 3-6 and he wasn't even at 3 yet. The final turn, he somehow ended up with a deck of like 4 and 8, and if I could get the Icy Tail Tor to hit the stage, I think I would have had a decent chance of closing the game if I attacked right and used the event. Unfortunately, my top checks and brainstorms just didn't give me a path to it, and I scooped after attacking into 3 more cancels. That made my record 3-3, so with no hope of going further and not feeling great about the day in general, I dropped. While the day turned out to be a bit disappointing for me, I did get to watch my 2 buddies play at the higher tables with better records. They ended up going 4-3 and 6-2 respectively, which was pretty awesome to see. I got to spectate some really cool and close games, and I was also able to gather some intel on what made it to the final rounds. So that said, let's talk about what showed up in Manhattan. To no one's surprise, Kanata Marine and 8 Standby Nino were by far the decks I saw the most of. I don't know what the numbers actually looked like, but I swear every other game I walked past had at least one Kanata Marine player. Same for Nino. Again, this is anything but news. What was more interesting to see was the abundance of new Titan, in particular the new Aaron Icy Tail ++ top end. I was happy to see multiple versions of that deck make it to the final rounds at higher tables, because I always thought that Aaron was a stronger finisher than people gave it credit for when it first came out. That said, a lot of different versions of Titan, including 8 Pants and 8 Gate, were present. Next to those, I saw a decent bit of Slime, some Rubio, and of course, 1 or 2 Bang Dream and Sunshine. Other than that, the field was a mixed bag, with a lot of different takes on Hololive, Quince, SAO, and Danmachi, while not necessarily being meta, still seemed to work fine. The Champion of Manhattan was Kanata Marine with the Okayu level 1 combo, second was Mushoku Tensei with a little more twin drive built in, third was a more traditional Kanata Marine, and fourth place was an 8-gate Itsuki, a deck that my playgroup in particular has been talking up as good into virtually everything right now. My friend that went 6-2 was also playing Itsuki, and the matches he lost seemed to be just taking some really bad beats. With the tournament over, however, we left New York on a dark, rainy night on the ferry and headed to warm up on the other side of the river with some Korean barbecue and booze. And another car ride later, the trip was over. So in a nutshell, that was my experience with BCS Manhattan. I had fun, my group did pretty well, and I'd also like to congratulate Stock Swap Games, who was kind enough to playtest with me beforehand for getting second place. So what are my takeaways? Well, mainly, Kana is memes, but it's not by any stretch a good deck. I knew that coming in, and I did what I wanted to do, which was catch some people off guard, but overall, it feels pretty bad to play into serious decks with cards that have better text than yours in a setting where people are taking it seriously. I decided to take a meme deck that I hadn't tested before to a regional, and I went 3-3. While this is way better than just scrubbing out, and better than I probably should have done, I think at least 2 of those wins were just down to my opponents having some pretty bad luck. And if I'm being honest with myself, I didn't play that well. To talk a bit candidly and air out my thoughts, recently I hadn't been feeling that great about my ability as a player, and being sick so much and not practicing or playtesting certainly didn't help. After playing Mushoku Tensei so much and feeling like the deck hated me every time I played it, I got kind of burnt out on competitive play for a while, and just fell back into playing some meme decks and sandbagging. I still wanted to go to New York, so I took Kana in an attempt to have a good time despite not being in a great mindset or strong position with a good deck. Playing Kana was fun for the sake of it, but between rounds, I found myself bored and just wanting to play more, and I did actually feel disappointed that I hadn't brought Mushoku and tried to play more seriously. Reflecting on that, I want to get back into the grind and take my own advice, which means trying to improve my gameplay by getting more consistent with the basics. I also want to figure out what deck I want to run going forward. It might be Mushoku, but it also might be Kanata Marine or even Sora Marine, since that round 6 deck I played again seemed really interesting. But overall, New York was a good time, and I did find a bit more direction in my own personal Weiss Schwarz journey. I hope you players at home are also enjoying your forays into Weiss Schwarz, and I want to thank everyone who came to New York to play, and thank Bushi for holding the event. I'm still enjoying Weiss Schwarz, and apparently I'm not alone, so look forward to more Weiss content from me, and very soon it'll be a new year of anime card games. So in case I don't get another chance to say this, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and I hope all your winter wishes come true. And as always, thanks for watching. Peace.